show me right from wrong. Give me light, make me strong. I know the road is long. Make me strong. Sometimes it just gets too. I know I'm waiting for something to happen to me. But this waiting comes with trials and challenges. Nothing in life is free. My Lord,
after as well. So really, the first thing what we should try to do is to correct our intentions. Why are we here? So really, it should really only be solely to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This should be our main intention. Apart from that, if you have other intentions that you came to see somebody, that's fine as well. And the other thing, because even with them intentions, one does actually benefit. But to achieve the maximum kind of benefit, you could say, one should actually correct their intention so they can achieve the maximum. So the schedule of the evening will be that, inshallah, there'll be the recitation of the Holy Quran, and then there'll be a nasheed recited as well. And then our Honorable Ustadh Shabaan, he will deliver some nasiyah. So important thing actually when we listen to the nasiyah, because sometimes we might think, oh, it's only a brother, and we just switch off. But this actually is not a good mindset to have, because sometimes the speaker can be inspired from different sources, and really it's not something that the speaker mentioning from themselves. It's from the Quran and some explanation of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from the books of hadith to the nearest meaning. And then obviously it's only good things that are mentioned, so there's only benefit. So one should also again correct the intention when they're sitting, and internally make a dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to listen attentively first thing. Why? Because sometimes we think we're listening, but our mind is all over the place. So we're listening to them, thoughts that are coming into the mind. We're not actually listening to the person who's addressing us. So ask help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because really, they say everything is difficult except what Allah makes easy. Even breathing is difficult. Ask the people who are in the hospitals, on the ventilators. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it so easy for us to breathe so many breaths in a day. So make this dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the tawfiq to listen attentively, and then also make the dua that Allah gives me the tawfiq to understand what's being said. Because sometimes you can be listening, and if you get the wrong understanding, this can also have consequences in a way. So make this dua, Allah gives us the tawfiq to understand what is being said, and then also make dua that Allah gives us the tawfiq to remember. Because if I listen to the lecture for 2 hours, and as soon as I walk to the chicken and the roti and I forgot everything, then I'm not going to be able to do one of the most important things, which is to apply this knowledge. So make dua to Allah that He gives us the tawfiq to remember and then apply. So not just application, but application with sincerity. Because if you apply, you do good deeds sometimes, and the sincerity is not as it should be, then there's a chance of losing that good deed as well. And then also make an intention that Allah gives us the tawfiq to then convey this message to other people. So whether it's to our families, whether it's to our neighbors, our friends, localities, or make a bigger intention that Allah allows us to take and share this message to the world. So this is very important when we come to these gatherings, so we can benefit more. So if I could kindly request the brothers to come a bit closer and try to make a semicircle. You fine there, brother? Ali, you fine? Yeah, we don't want to trouble you. You're okay, yeah. Inshallah. So same again, a second row behind the first row, inshallah, because obviously other people will come. Just try to fill this, inshallah. It's quite easy, the second row behind that one, inshallah. Yeah, and then the third one. Also now, if you please just check your phones, mobile phones, put them onto silent or switch them off. And put your hand in your pocket, take it out. That's it. Put your hand in your pocket and take the second one out. Switch that off as well. MashaAllah. Because sometimes the alarms go off and then people get distracted, inshallah. MashaAllah. So now I'd like to invite our Honorable Muhammad Sahib to start the majlis with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Jazakallah khair.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام را. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوهينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبت إني رأيت 11 كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين. قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤيك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين. وكذلك يجتبيك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم. لقد كان في يوسف لأبيه آيات للسائلين. آمنت بالله صدق الله العظيم.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair. I'd like to request our son Hassan now, inshallah, to recite the nasheed. Jazakallah.
आखिरी उम्र में क्या रो न के दुनिया देखूं हूँ अब तो बस के ही धुन है کہ مدینہ دیکھوں اب تو بس ایک ہی دن ہے کہ مدینہ دیکھوں مینو مجبوریات دوریاں نے ماریا مینو مجبوریات دوریاں نے ماریا سد لو مدینے آقا سد لو مدینے آقا کرو میرے بانیاں اب تو بس کہ ہی دن ہے کہ مدینہ دیکھوں اب تو بس ایک ہی دن ہے کہ مدینہ دیکھوں میرے مولا میری آنکھیں مجھے واپس کر دے میرے مولا میری آنکھیں مجھے واپس کر دے تاکہ ایک بار میں جی بھر تاکہ ایک بار میں جی بھر کہ مدینہ دیکھوں اب تو بس کہ ہی دن ہے کہ مدینہ دیکھوں اب تو بس ایک ہی دن ہے کہ مدینہ دیکھوں آخری عمر میں کیا رونق دنیا دیکھوں آخری عمر میں کیا رونق دنیا دیکھوں
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم الحمدللہ رب العالمین الصلاة والسلام علی رسول اللہ وعلی آلہ واصحابہ اجمعین اما بعد. Nowadays, especially in this day and age, we have people, especially like we have a lot of youth here, and many people, especially living in a Western country, in the UK, we struggle a lot, and there's so many distractions out there. For example, family, friends, those who are married, they have wives, children, work, business, and living in the UK, especially in Western countries, there's a lot more opportunity as well, opportunity to do sins, for example, drugs, for example, fornicating, for example, fraud. And even people who are not sinning, and they, for example, on the purification course, there's other distractions there, for example, laziness and other types of heedlessness that a person can go through. And even when a person, that's on the outside world, but even when a person's living, even in their own house, there's other distractions, for example, TV, laptops, maybe sometimes it's problems, maybe sometimes it's distractions on the phone. And a lot of the times, especially with the youth nowadays, we want to do good and we wish to do good. So we pray, for example, today we pray Jummah, and in Ramadan we fast, And we have this wish to practice Islam and get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. We have this want that we want to obey Allah Azza wa Jal, we want to follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But despite having that want, what happens is we complain that despite having this want, wherever we go, whatever situation that we're in, we feel that there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of temptations where we end up committing sin and we end up falling into sin. And sometimes we don't even have the intention to do it. So let's say, for example, it could be a friend that we have, maybe a childhood friend, and sometimes what happens is just by being around that person, we end up falling into sin and we don't have that intention of doing it. Or it could be a family member that's committing a sin and we just happen to be with them. And so situations and surroundings that we're always in, it forces us sometimes to commit sin and fall into sin even when we don't want to. And even though we have that want to do what we want, have that want to obey Allah Azza wa Jal. So, and sometimes it's very difficult to stay steadfast because there's so many even internal situations, like for example laziness a person goes through, or heedlessness that a person goes through, where what happens is even when they're not sinning, they may have other traits in them that stop them. Now, what's the solution for this? This is something that every single one of us go through. But what's the solution for this? What guidance does Allah Azza wa Jal give us in the Quran, that when you're in a situation with loads of distractions, problems, dunya, shaitan, desires, because there's a lot of enemies that a person has out there, especially outside enemies. You have, for example, shaitan, and inside enemies a person has, for example, their own nafs. So what a person feels like is sometimes a person feels like they're surrounded, that no matter what situation a person comes into, there's an obstacle in front of them that either forces them to commit sin or they end up falling in the sin by accident. Now, thankfully for us, Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned in the Quran that how a person can overcome this. So like many youth here and a lot of us here, these are problems that every single one of us is facing. No matter whether that's, for example, problems where we commit sins on the phone, whether there's certain apps that we're going on, whether there's certain websites, or let's say, for example, someone who's a bit older, maybe he's forced to do something, maybe there's certain fraud that he might do. Maybe he's doing business, he's making a lot of money, and at the end of the year he sees his tax bill and he's thinking, I'm not paying that. That's a lot of money. But in so many situations, we always have these things where certain issues happen and we end up falling into the sin. So Allah Azza wa Jal has given us a certain solution from the Quran, but He has given us 3 things that if we do these 3 things, then is guaranteed that we can come out of this situation or this addiction or this problem or this sin that we keep falling into. And just how Muhammad Sahib mentioned whilst they were praying the ayats of the Quran, and they mentioned the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. It's in this story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam where in the Quran where they were surrounded by a certain situation, and what happened? Allah Azza wa Jal took them out of this problem that they faced. But just how He had to do these 3 certain things to come out of this problem, we have to do these certain things to come out of this problem as well. It's like, let's say for example, a person wants to unlock a phone and there's a 3-digit code or a 4-digit code on there. If he doesn't press the right digits and doesn't press all the digits, it's not going to unlock the phone. In the same way, if a person just presses 3 of the 4 digits and press the 4th one wrong, it's not going to work. A person has to do what? He has to unlock Allah's help, he has to do what? All 3 things. And when he does all 3 things, then Allah's help then comes to this person. So as I was mentioning the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, Prophet Joseph. And we all know the story when the king's wife, they called them into the room and invited them towards doing what? Towards disobeying Allah Azza wa Jal. So invited a prophet of Allah into what? Towards sin. And just imagine if that happens to one of us, a beautiful woman's inviting us towards evil. Now, we know 90% of the time what would happen, but what did he do? That's the thing that Allah Azza wa Jal is trying to tell us in the Quran. Now, imagine in the same way how Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam was surrounded by this desire in a room, and the room was locked. So, and the key, they didn't have access to the key. So just imagine how they felt at that time. So just how they felt at that time, surrounded by these desires, that's how we feel sometimes. We're surrounded by desires, we're surrounded by certain sins, we're surrounded by, whether it's money, whether it's fame, with certain addictions, certain bad habits that we've picked up that we do, and 90% of the time when we do it we feel bad, and that shows that we don't want to be in that situation. But what happens is, like I said, maybe bad friends, maybe bad company, it forces us into situations where we end up committing these sins even though we don't want to. So what are these three things that is mentioned, that Allah has mentioned in the Quran? Now we have to understand this, that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam passed away many centuries before the Quran was revealed. So what we have to understand is, why is Allah Azza wa Jal relating their story in the Quran? It's not for them, because they can't benefit from it, because they've already passed away before the Quran was even revealed. So the reality is that Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us and explaining to us how to get out of this similar situation, whether it's through fraud or whether it's committing certain acts of indecency, whether it's pornography, whether it's drugs, no matter what situation that we're in, is how do we get out of this situation? Because every single one of us here, we're trapped in a room, just like Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam were trapped in a room. So, but the good thing is, if Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us this story, that shows that we can get out of that room, just like how Allah Azza wa Jal helped Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam get out of that room. So we can also get out of that room. But how do we get out of that room? And this is what Allah Azza wa Jal teaches us in this story, that how do we get out of this situation that we're in? The first thing is, what did he do? He sought help from Allah Azza wa Jal by saying, Allah, to the nearest meaning, he said, Allah, I am nothing. Ya Allah, I need your protection, I need your help. That's the first thing that he did. So what is the first thing? The first thing is that to seek help from Allah Azza wa Jal, to say, Allah, please help me with this problem, with this addiction, with this sin that I'm committing, with this drugs, with this pornography, whatever sin a person's committing. Allah, help me in this situation. I'm powerless, I'm weak, I seek power through your power. So you have to admit your weakness in front of Allah Azza wa Jal firstly. So you have to admit that you're helpless. Because if you had power, you wouldn't be stuck in that room, whether it's a room physically, whether it's a depression a person's going through, no matter what, they wouldn't be stuck in that situation if they knew how to get out, number one, and number two, if they had the power to get out. So a person, when he admits that he's got no power and he relies on Allah Azza wa Jal, and he seeks power through the power of Allah Azza wa Jal, because that's what the meaning is of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, is that there's no power or might except from Allah. So we say it all the time, but we don't believe in it. And that's the reality, because the person, when he thinks and he ponders, every single blink that he's doing is not him. It's like, for example, Allah Azza wa Jal give you power over the mind, and He's given you, what scientists say, that you have power, about 10% of your mind is in your control, and the other 90% is not in your control. And that's what they call it, subconscious mind. That 90% is in whose control? Is in Allah's control. When you eat the food, when it gets digested, who's controlling that aspect of it? Allah is controlling that aspect of it. That 90% of your mind is telling you how to blink. And if you don't believe me, keep your eyes open, try not to blink. Allah will show you His power. He'll force you to blink. In the same way, 90% of the mind is controlled by Allah. He's only give us 10%. If that, I've heard once or twice that it's actually 2, 3, 4% that we have control over. The other 90% is in Allah's control. So that shows you. So let's say, for example, when we go to the bathroom, when we have that urge to urinate, or when we eating, the food's digesting, or when we're tired, who's doing all this? It's the subconscious that's doing all this, but who's in control of it? It's Allah that's in control of it. So that shows you His power, that He's the one who does everything. So many times people think, so when a person is locked in this situation, just like how Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam was, many times a person thinks that, oh, I can't get out of this situation now, so I might as well just sit here. If I'm in this addiction of drugs, I'll just keep doing it till I die, because I'm stuck. Because they don't have the key. But neither did Hazrat Yusuf al-Islam have the key. But he did what? So no one can do anything apart from what Allah's will. No one can leave a bad habit. No one can do any good. Nothing can happen except for the will of Allah. So that's the first thing. And then what's the second thing? So the second thing that Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam he did was, you should have this will, not a wish. So a person, like how Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam got out of this situation, if a person wants to get out of this situation, he needs to have a will to get out of this situation. Otherwise, he's going to stick in this addiction, he's going to stick in this fraud or drugs or this sin or these bad habits that he's doing. He's not going to be able to get out of it. Because what's going to happen is, he's just going to have this wish. Now, what's the difference? A person can ask, what's the difference between a wish and a will? The difference is, let's say for example, if I ask you, put your hands up if you want to be a millionaire. Put your hands up if you want to be a millionaire. At least we've got one honest person here. 2, 3, 4. Alright, the rest of you are content, mashallah. Or 5. MashaAllah. But in the same way, so in your hearts, I know everybody here wants to be a millionaire. You're just not putting your hands up, you're shy. But the thing is, how many people out there become millionaires? Out of 100, 1. Out of 1,000, 1. Out of 10,000, 1. Why? Because that person has the will to change. He has a will to get up in the morning, whether it's 5, 6, 7, and work till 10 o'clock to reach his goal. If he had a wish like us, it wouldn't happen. So just like how if 10,000 people want to be millionaires and one person becomes a millionaire, the other 19,000 ain't gonna, or 9,000 ain't gonna become a millionaire just by wishing. It's not gonna happen. No matter how hard they want to do it, it's not going to happen. So just in the same way, a person, that's how it is. So let's say for example, there's a fruit tree. Now, let's say it's a hot day, a summer's day, and there's a fruit tree. Now, there's 2 friends. One, there's beautiful ripened apples on the tree. Now, there's 2 friends. One friend, they both want the apple, but one friend, he just keeps looking at the tree and thinks, oh, I wish this apple would come to me. Oh, I wish I could have this apple. And he starts imagining how it tastes, the sweetness of the apple, how it quenches his thirst. And he just sat there looking at the apple. Whilst the second friend, what does he do? He gets up, climbs the tree, gets the apple and eats it. By the time he's eating the apple, he's still thinking about the apple. And that's the difference between what? Wish and will. The first friend, he just says a wish. He just keeps looking at the apple. He's not going to make a change. And the second friend, he wants the apple and he has a will to get the apple. So what does he do? He works hard. He climbs the tree. He could fall. He could break a leg. But he risks it. For what? The apple. And he enjoys the apple. Now, the first friend can sit there for 1,000 years, the apple's not going to come to him. So, in the same way, a person has to have a will, not a wish. So if a person has a wish to do something, they could be trapped in that box, in that room that they have made themselves, that room of addiction with the doors locked. They're going to be trapped in there for the rest of their life. They're not going to be able to get out of it. They're not going to be able to get out of the addiction. They're not going to be able to get out of the sin. They're not going to be able to get out of the depression that they're in until they get up and they have to find a solution themselves. So a person who wills, he is willing to pay the price. He's willing to do what? He's willing to sacrifice something. So just how we mentioned earlier on, the millionaire, the one who wants to be a millionaire, he's willing to get up at 5 a.m. to go work in the morning and to open his business. Whilst a lot of us won't do that. It's like, let's say, for example, we have Brother Usman here. He gets up 4 or 5 a.m, goes for a run. I couldn't do that. But the thing is, he wants to be a boxer. He wants to be a world champion, so he does it. He has the will. He has the characteristic of having a will to do something. So if a person wants something, what does he do? He gives his money, he gives his energy, he will sacrifice something, and what will happen then? And that's the difference between having a will and having a wish. And this is even in hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they mention that the wise one is who controls his nafs, his desires. And the foolish one is who? He follows his desires and then hopes for the forgiveness of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the wise person is who? He's the one who controls his desires. And the foolish one is who? He does whatever he wants, and then he says, I rely on Allah's mercy. And the thing is, that's the difference. And even it's steadier that this is a person who's foolish, he's just doing what? He's only fooling himself, he's not fooling anybody else. So if a person wants to actually go and get out of this situation, get out of this addiction that he's in, and wants a cure for his habits, wants a cure for his addiction, then he has to be willing to pay a price. He has to be willing to sacrifice something. And even then, so what does, as going back to the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, what did Allah Azza wa Jal say about Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam? What did he sacrifice? So just like how our sacrifices are small level sacrifices, maybe if it's going into drugs, maybe you're doing that drug with a certain friend of yours. So our sacrifice, what would it be? Just don't answer the friend's call. Just leave. Or maybe if it's you're going to certain places with a certain friend, don't answer the friend's call. If he knocks on the door, just tell him that please don't knock on again. That sacrifice is small. But like for example, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, of what they were willing to sacrifice. Like I said, point number 2 is that a person has to be willing to do what? He has to be willing to sacrifice something. Now what were they willing to sacrifice? They said, they even made a dua that, Allah, instead of this palace, because they were a minister in a palace of Allah, of the king of the time. They were, the king at the time, he used to have a big palace, and Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam used to be a minister there, and he used to be in control of all the food. So just like you have the queen, she has ministers, she has a prime minister, she has other ministers, she has health secretary, she has transport secretary. And in that times, he was like the equivalent of the health secretary. He was in charge of what? He was in charge of all the food and responsible for the distribution of the food in the whole of that Egypt region at the time. So just imagine, he is willing to sacrifice his position, he is willing to sacrifice living in a palace, having everything he wants. And what did he say? Oh Allah, I'd prefer to go into what? I'd prefer to go to the jail than to disobey you. So he was willing to imagine what his sacrifice he was willing to do. And it's not just empty words. He actually spent years in a jail. He actually took the sacrifice. He was willing to pay the price for what? Not to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. Now we're not talking about our jails where you get PS4, PS5s, you got canteen, 4 times meals. It's not like that. Jails then, you've seen in movies, it was like a dungeon, underground. You probably never saw light, probably never saw the sun for 10 years. Where you used to be a bucket in a corner where you used to do your toilet. It weren't like the jails now. Maybe there was 10 people in a small room. There weren't no hygiene, no nothing. They were willing to no sun, no nothing. Underground somewhere, they were willing to sacrifice a palace, sacrifice everything, and spend years in a jail to do what? Not to make sure that he didn't disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. So just how, imagine their sacrifice, like I said, the Prophets, their sacrifice was a lot higher than ours. All we have to do is maybe not see a certain friend, or maybe not go to a certain place, or if there's a certain addiction that person's doing on his phone, maybe go and sit with the family member instead of being on your own all the time. That's the sacrifice that we have to do. If a person's constantly on their phone, just put your phone to the side. And this is everyone, like I said, everyone in this room will have a certain blockage, they will have a certain addiction, they will have a certain habit that they're in that they can't get out of. Because, like I said, we have open enemies, we have inside enemies, we have enemies inside, internal and external. Sometimes a person falls, and everyone here, if I tell you put your hands up if you want to disobey, nobody would put their hands up. Why? Because nobody intentionally wants to do that. What happens? They fall into these habits. So in the same way, when a person falls, he has to know how to get out of that situation. So it's like a insurance policy where, okay, you've fallen, now how do I get out of this situation? It's like a skill a person learns. So that's the second thing that person needs to do. And that is, he has to have the will to change. He has to sacrifice something. You have to pay for something. Nobody gets a Ferrari for free. You have to pay for it. You have to work hard. In the same way, nobody's going to get out of certain situation and habits without paying for it. You have to sacrifice something, whether that's a friend, whether that's your phone, whether that's money, whatever it is, whether that's not going certain places. So that's the second thing. So first thing is to know what you're powerless. Second thing is to do what? It is to have the will to change. And the third thing is, what did Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam do then? So they did the first and the second thing. They had reliance on Allah. They had the second thing. They didn't want to disobey Allah. They were willing to spend their life in jail than to commit a sin. And that's what happened. To avoid that, they spent years in jail because of it. But that was the sacrifice that they gave. So what's the sacrifice? What's the third thing? What did Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam then do? Even though the door was locked, like we mentioned earlier, the room, there was a beautiful woman in the room, the door was locked, privacy, nobody could see in. But what did he do? He didn't just sit there and say, oh, forget it, door's locked, just sit down. Don't work like that. What did he do? He tried his best. And what was his best? Running to the door. He ran to the door. He didn't say, he wasn't bothered if the door's locked. If it's got 4 locks on it, he's not bothered. If there's guards standing on the other side, he's not bothered. He did what was in his power. So that's what a person then has to do. So, and then what happened when he ran to the door? It miraculously opened and Allah Azza wa Jal saved him. So what's Allah Azza wa Jal teaching us in this third thing, that what is Allah Azza wa Jal teaching us? Allah Azza wa Jal is teaching us that if a person tries his best, he has to go to the end and have reliance on Allah. That no matter if the door is locked, you run to the door. You try your best. That's what Allah is asking for you. And if the door is locked, it doesn't matter. He'll open the door. And if there is no door, if it's just 4 walls of brick, He'll make a door. It's Allah's will. So that's the third thing that we have to do, is that we have to do what's in our power to get out of that situation. Sometimes it's maybe, like I said, leaving a friend. That's in our power. Maybe not spending too much time on our own. That's in our power. Maybe it's leaving the phone, giving it to your parents. That's in our power. Maybe if it's certain places that we're visiting, avoid that situation, avoid that area. That's in our power. So that's what we have to do, is that we don't have the door, we don't have the power to open the door, but we don't, and neither did he. He didn't have the power to open the door, and he didn't have the keys. And he didn't even know, alayhi salam, if it was locked or not. But what did he do? He just did what? He used in his power, what was in his ability, and he just tried his best, and he ran towards the door, and it opened for him. So that's Allah teaching us, that a person has to go to the limit. You can't just say, oh, I've done my bit, or I can't climb this wall, it's too high, or there's no door here, just sit there and just accept that you're going to live like that for the rest of your life. Because if you don't, you are going to live like that for the rest of your life. And so you have to go to the limit. So you can't say, oh, I can't do this, but the thing is, if you don't do it, then what's the other option? The other option is living in that situation for the rest of your life. So, and that's when Allah will open doors for you that you could never imagine. Why? Because now you're not, number one, you're doing, that's what the concept of mujahidah is. That what we taught is mujahidah, is to try your best, to go to the limit. And after that, only then do the doors open for a person. And then what happens? If a person does these three things, leaving sins, leaving these addictions, it will be easy. You won't even feel it. Why? Because you're not using your power anymore. You're using Allah's power. Our issues are small. Just imagine you're dealing with the person who the sun rotates with his power. Such a vast creation that he has that power. He has the power, and there's millions of stars rotating at the same time. And he has the power to also make every one of our digestive system working at the same time. That's the power that Allah has. So for him is nothing. So when you rely on him, you'll be coming out of these addictions very easily, very quickly. But if you don't, there's also a warning that if you don't use this 3-digit code, like what we mentioned, just like our 3-digit code, if you don't use the right code, the phone doesn't unlock. In the same way, Allah's help won't come if you don't use all three of the points that we mentioned, all three of the points that we mentioned. If you don't use them, what will happen is you won't be able to get out of this situation. You'll notice years will go by, you'll still be stuck in that situation. Why? Because a person has to do all three for the help of Allah to unlock and come down on him. And that is, number one, to rely on Allah. Number two, to have the will to change. And number three, that a person has to go to his limit so he can go further and further. Because if a person doesn't do this, then there's other, like just how we mentioned the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, there's other stories out there as well. And there's other stories where Allah has mentioned, like for example, the story of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, of Prophet Moses alayhi salam. And what happened there when Allah freed him from Pharaoh. And how did he free him? He made it, even the sea depart. He opened the sea so they can go through. And even after all that, the people of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, when they got to Palestine, when they got to Jerusalem, and Allah told them to enter, all you have to do is go through the door, the gate of the city, and it's yours. And what did they say? Oh no, we can't do that. They look like they're tough people in there, they're going to beat us. So they said to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, oh Prophet of Allah, you go, you and your Rabb go, and tell us when it's safe. It don't work like that. They weren't willing to do what? They weren't willing to do point two. They weren't willing to go and do their bit. So a person has to be able to do his bit. And otherwise, what happened after that? Allah says in the Quran, they were roaming around in the deserts for what? For 40 years. Why? Because they didn't go and they didn't enter. And even when Allah said that all you have to do is enter the city and the victory will be yours, they still weren't willing to do that. And in the same way, you got other examples where in the life of the Sahaba, where they did do that. They did have that extra help because they went all the way. Example is Battle of Badr, when they didn't even have the intention to go to war. They were just going to get their own stuff back. They heard that there's a caravan coming with all our goods that they left from Mecca, and they came to Medina, they left everything, and they realized that there's a caravan coming with all our goods, and the Meccans were going to use them goods against them. So they wanted their stuff back. So what did they do? They went there, 313. They didn't have no intention of going to war. They didn't have no intention of going to battle. They had a couple of camels, they had a few swords, and that's all they had. And they were fasting, it was in middle of Ramadan. So just imagine in the heat of the summer, fasting, all you want is your stuff back. And then what happened? 1,000 Quraysh turned up, full ready for war. Camels, horses, armor, swords, everything. They were ready for the war. And what did they do? They didn't say, oh, we're fasting, sit back down, or we can't do this. We've not got no water in us, or we've not got no swords, we've got no camels, they're gonna do whatever they want, they're gonna annihilate us. They didn't do, like, for example, what the people of Sayyidina Musa did, that, oh, we can't go there, they're tough. What did they do? They said, we're not backing off, we're going to go forward. And what happened? When they did their three things, when they relied on Allah, when they had a will that we're not going to stop, we're not going to walk off, we're going to stand our ground. Third thing, we're going to fight to our limit, even though we're fasting. What happened then? Like I said, they pressed the 3-digit code on Allah's help, they unlocked Allah's help. What happened? Everyone knows. The Frishte came down, the angels came down and helped them. So in the same way, if a person is not willing to do what Allah has already mentioned in the Quran, they won't be able to get out of this situation. They're going to be stuck in this. And that's if a person's got addictions. If a person's, maybe, mashallah, they're doing well, and maybe sometimes what happens is they're on the other side, maybe they've overcome these addictions, but then what happens is they're on the course, mashallah, they're doing well, but sometimes they end up becoming heedless. And what happens is dunya sometimes gets them. The Mashaykh have even mentioned then that there's 5 points that a person, if a person does these 5 points, then again Allah's help will come down and it will help them. So the first thing and the first point is that a person, if a person doesn't want to become heedless and he wants to avoid certain situations and he wants to avoid certain things that will force him into maybe becoming lazy, maybe becoming heedless, then a person has to, the Mashaykh mentioned that a person has to create a 5-layer of protection around them. And what will happen with this is that it will stop the person, number 1, from committing sins. Number 2, it will stop this person from becoming in ghafla. And what happens with ghafla? That's what happens when a person starts to lead down this road. And they mentioned that the first point that a person has to do is work for dunya. So what is that? So a lot of people, they say, oh, we're praying namaz, but they're on benefits, and they wake up at 12, go sleep at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. They have no routine. So a person, the Mashaykh mentioned, the first thing is what? That person has to work for dunya. He has to earn a halal income. They have to work hard. That doesn't mean that a person, he works hard, but he does, let's say if he sells drugs or he does fraud. That means that a person works hard and is satisfied with what Allah gives him. If it's written for him that he's going to earn £1 million, he says alhamdulillah. If it's written for him to earn £20,000, £10,000, he says alhamdulillah, because he's worked hard and that's what Allah's given him. So that's the first thing, is that a person has to work hard. And they don't seek what? They don't seek more than what they're destined for. So they don't say, okay, if I work 8 hours, I get £20,000. Or if I work 16 hours, I get £40,000. Don't work like that. They're happy with what they get. And they're content in Allah's will. So how does this help a person from falling into heedlessness, from falling into laziness, from falling into these traps? So first thing was that we spoke about how to get out of the trap, and how to get out of the addiction, how to get out of that situation where a person is stuck in four walls and they don't know how to get out of it. So now when a person gets out of it, now a person learns that skill of how to get out of it. But the thing is, now they need to learn the skill of how not to get back into the situation. So first thing is to get, if you're sinning, if you have these addictions, to get out of the addiction. But the second thing is, if a person's already stuck in the addiction, come out of the addiction, and he has that skill of how to come out of the addiction, now he needs to learn the skill of what? Of how to not get stuck in the same situation again. So how not to get stuck in the same addictions again. So the first thing is, a person, you might think, what's working got to do with anything? What's working for dunya? That's got nothing to do with deen. But the thing is, why is it important? The reason is because when a person works, it stops him from becoming lazy. So let's say, for example, Monday morning, winter, 6 o'clock start, snowing outside, nobody wants to go outside. But what happens? They have to go. So what does this stop? It stops a person from becoming lazy. So they don't end up having a bad routine. So because when a person has a bad routine, then what happens? The bad habits start to come in. So if a person's going to sleep at 3, 4 in the morning, waking up at 1, 2 in the afternoon, they're not going to be doing anything positive till 3 in the morning. There's only going to be having, and if they're with their friends till that time, they're not going to have good friends at 3 in the morning that they're with. So when a person works hard and he works as a halal income, what does that do? It stops a person from becoming lazy. So the second wall and defense of how not to fall back into the addiction is that person should think that death is waiting for that person like a guest. So let's say, for example, if you're at home and someone's knocked on the door for you, and let's say your brother's gone answering the door, and he said, "Oh, is Qasim in?" And then he comes to you, and then you say, "Oh no, he's praying," "Oh no, he's doing something." And then your brother comes to you and says, "Oh, your friend's outside." Even if you're praying, you might be praying or you might be doing something, but what's going to be happening? In the back of your mind, you're going to be thinking, "My friend's waiting outside." So just like in the same way, a person has that thing. It's natural, it happens, doesn't it? That a person thinks, even when they're praying, then when they know that, let's say for example they're praying and they know, hang on a minute, I've got a doctor's appointment in 15 minutes. Trust me, 90% of that salah is thinking about the doctor's appointment. Because it's natural, it happens. But that's why in the same way, when a person thinks that death is waiting for that person like a guest, a person is thinking, it's always, he might be chatting to his friend, I might be chatting to Zen, but it'll be on the back of your mind thinking, right, okay, so I have to attend to them. So, and we already know that the angel of death visits a person every single day anyway. So it's not like it's something far-fetched. It happens on a daily basis. So what does this do? So how does this protect that person from not falling back into that addiction or back into that hole? Now he's pulled himself out. He doesn't fall back into the hole. Is what? It creates a sense of urgency for the person. So now he thinks, he's not being lazy. He thinks, oh, I need to be prepared because death can come at any time. So he's not thinking, oh, go through your education. Oh, I'm young, I'm 16. I need to still go to college. I still need to go to university. Still need to get a nice house, get a nice car. No. Person knows that, hang on a minute. And that is true. Everyone's here probably knows someone, young lad, or you similar age to yourself that's passed away. So it's not like we're making this up. It's a reality that can happen. So then that's what the second wall is of protecting yourself, is that the person then, he has this sense of urgency that, no, I can't wait till I'm 50 to prepare for death. It can come when I'm 20. Or what's the guarantee I'm going to make it to university or get married or have kids? You don't know. A person could die in a car crash. So that's the second wall. Then they mentioned that the third wall is that they say that there's certain rights of Allah on me that only I can fulfill, and nobody else can fulfill them rights. It's like nobody else can eat for you. They can put the best food in the world. Someone could take you to Mobs for a buffet, but no one's going to eat that for you. They'll even pay for it. They'll even pay for the drinks. They'll pay for whatever you want. They're not going to eat it for you though. In the same way, just how a person, like a father, knows his responsibility. It's like, for example, the fathers here, they'll tell you, no one's going to feed their kid. If they don't get up in the morning and go at 7 o'clock to work, no one's going to pay the bills. No one's going to feed their kids. So they accept that. They understand that's their responsibility. So what do? Whether they like it or not, they get up in the morning and they go to work. So that's what the third thing is, when a person thinks that, how does a person has certain rights of Allah has certain rights upon me, how does this help a person, protect a person from falling in the traps again? It protects that person because they realize it's their responsibility. Nobody else can do anything for them. Like how we mentioned the hadith before, that a person, he could be, like they mentioned in the hadith before, that a wise person is he controls his nafs, and a fool is who? He follows his desires. He follows it, whether it's to bad friends, whether it's to bad company, whether it's to bad habits, whether it's to bad websites on the phone. He follows his desires, and then what he does, oh, Allah will have mercy on me. This is what shaitan does. Believe it or not, this is what shaitan does. This is the perfect example for him. Because even after, it says in some seerah books that when shaitan, even after the Day of Judgment, when one of the signs, what's the major signs of Day of Judgment? When what? The sun will, instead of it coming from, I don't know whether it comes from the east or the west, but it will turn around. It will go the opposite way. And after that, we all know what happens. The door of forgiveness closes. So then you could do tawbah all your life then after that. There's no tawbah. So at that point he realizes, my job's done now, I don't need to. And what's he going to do? In front of all his cronies, in front of all his friends or whoever bad friends he's made, in front of all his generals, in front of all his soldiers, you know what he's going to do? He's going to go into sajda in front of Allah. That's what he's going to do. This is facts. This is going to happen. That after everything, because he's done his job now. There's no one, if you're doing bad things now, there's no forgiveness, or even if you're alive for another 50 years, there's no, it doesn't matter anymore because you can't turn back. So there's no point even going, even if there's people on the earth, then you won't even be bothered with them. He knows they're going to go to hell now. So then what will he do? He will turn around, and his cronies, his generals, his soldiers, what will happen is they're all going to be shocked. They will be like, we've been following this guy all our life, and he's been telling us that Allah is our enemy, these are our enemy, and now he is bound to Allah, and he's going to say to him, you fools. Straight away. He's not going to wait till the Day of Judgment and say to him, you fools. He's going to say it on that day when that sun turns. He's going to say, you fools. Because now he thinks, because he knows Allah, he knows the mercy of Allah, but he's a fool. And why? Because he's followed his desires all that time, and now he thinks that Allah's going to have mercy on him and he's going to have forgiveness, but it's not going to happen. In the same way, certain habits that we have, or certain people that we know, and even myself, we have this feeling that we think, oh, it's okay. Allah is the most merciful. Sometimes you hear people that you're 50 weighing up, oh, don't worry. Allah created me out of mercy. He's going to have forgiveness on me. Okay, that's fine. That's a shaitani way of thinking. That's a shaitanic mindset that a person has. So the third thing is that Allah has certain rights upon me, and only I can fulfill them responsibilities. The fourth wall, to avoid going back into that hole, is that a person is he's in the remembrance of Allah. He knows, he's in the awareness of Allah, that Allah's with me, Allah's watching me, Allah hears me, and he's closely watching every deed, and he never forgets. So if a person has this mindset, then he knows what's the benefit of it. He knows that Allah will hold him accountable. And the fifth thing, And the fifth wall of protection against heedlessness is that know that with every breath your life's coming to an end. It's like, for example, Sayyidina Hassan al-Basri mentioned that it is not when a person, death doesn't just come to you in one go. Every single day is a death. And if you think about it as a house, so let's say, for example, a house is built, but what's it built with? Bricks. Just imagine every single brick is a day. The house doesn't collapse, or the house doesn't, when the house starts collapsing when you start taking bricks by bricks. Maybe your life's already on the first floor. Maybe there's some people that their life, they're young, they're still on the roof. Maybe there's some people that they've reached that pillar. We don't know. But death's not going to come in one go. Every single day is like the brick, one brick getting removed. Is you're already dying. So that every time you're eating, every time you're breathing, every time you're sleeping, so you're breathing all the time. So with each breath is like a brick going. So you don't know how much bricks you got left. Maybe you're on the first floor, maybe you're on a skyscraper yet. You don't know. We don't know. So that's what happens, is that how does this help a person avoid getting back in that situation? Is that a person, he then realizes he's not got much time. Because before, a person had that mindset that, oh, I've got all the time in the world. Now he realizes that time's against him. That before he used to think time's in his control, in his hands, he realized, no, I'm in the hands of time. It's in. Instead of me being in control, time's in control. Because you don't know if it's your last day. So that's how it helps a person. So this is how the Mashayikh mentioned there's two ways of how a person can protect himself. If a person's already stuck inside of the rut that he's in, if a person's already stuck in the hole, how can a person get out? And it's like the ladder will only come to get you out when you have them three keys. Number one, reliance. Number two, having the will. And number three is to try your best and to reach. Because a person, it could be in that hole, you don't know. Even if Allah Azza wa Jal gives the ladder, if a person doesn't have the will, he's not going to climb the ladder, he's going to stay in the hole forever. So on the 5 ways to stop falling back into the hole is that a person, he should work for dunya. He should treat death like it's a guest that is waiting for you. You can come at any time. Number 3 is that there's certain rights of Allah Azza wa Jal that only I can fulfill. Nobody else is going to do it for me. Just like how nobody else is going to eat for you, nobody else can do them for you. Number 4, to understand that have the awareness that Allah Azza wa Jal is with me. Allah is watching me and Allah hears me. And the 5th wall of protection, to avoid falling into the hole again. It's like we're building fences around the hole so we don't fall in again. And that is that with every breath of our life is coming to an end. Slowly but surely it's coming to an end. And if a person does this, then he will protect himself. Firstly, he will be able to get out of the hole, and secondly, he will be able to create fences there where he doesn't fall back in to the hole. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah to our Honorable Ustadh Shabaan. He really helped us to recognize the weaknesses within us and also given some sort of solutions. Sometimes it's too much to take in, and obviously there's practical ways actually how to implement these solutions. So alhamdulillah, at this center we teach a course which actually helps us to slowly overcome these unlawful desires which are leading to sin. Because like Ustadh Shabaan mentioned, the reminder of death, some things we can't choose. So a person can't choose to be of a certain color or such, or certain height, or certain other things. The most important thing what they can't choose is when they're going to leave this world. So even today in Denmark, we heard there was a young brother who passed away in his sleep last night. So many of us, we go to sleep casually at night, sometimes sleeping while we're actually on the phone. So you're actually on the phone or watching Netflix or something, and you're asleep. But really, that's the time when you're really supposed to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's certain du'as that the Prophet ﷺ has taught us to actually recite. Why? Because when we sleep at night, it is like a small death. And that's why when we wake up in the morning, the Prophet ﷺ again has taught us to thank Allah. Why? Because He gave us life again after giving us death, and to Him we shall return. So these are really wake-up calls. We always think, we've got plenty of time, when in reality only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So these are the times to actually, really opportunities to grab. So if one is not already embarked on this journey towards the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so just for about 10 to 15 minutes after the food, because we don't want you to be thinking about the food while you're trying to explain. So just come downstairs after the food and approach myself or one of the brothers, inshallah, and they'll sit with you just to give you an overview. And then, like they say, the ball is in your court. You go window shopping to many shops, but actually what you're going to buy is your choice at the end of the day. So we'll try to assist you and give you some advice in how you can overcome these things that are keeping us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As most of you are aware, alhamdulillah, our blessed teacher, Sheikh Ahmad Dabbagh, Hafizullah, they are in Denmark at the moment, and they are benefiting the people of Denmark through the blessed mission of conveying the message. So there are a few events that are happening. There will be a master class that will be led by them on Sunday the 12th at 6:45 p.m. It will also be broadcast on Facebook, Sheikh Ahmad Dabbagh, Tareeqah Muhammadiyah Denmark. But this is really mainly for mentors and trainers. Also, they will be attending a spiritual retreat from the 17th to the 19th of December. This is in a city or area named Odense in Denmark. So those people in Denmark or those people you know, they can invite people and benefit from that. So locally and nationally, alhamdulillah, tomorrow at 6 p.m., inshallah, there will be a collective healing event in Birmingham. The details are on the Sheikh Ahmad Dabbagh Facebook page and other social media platforms. But this is for people who are suffering from any sort of physical illness, spiritual illness, whether it's jinnat, magic, even mental illnesses, because you've noticed over the lockdown period, a lot of people it's actually increased people who are suffering from mental illnesses. So now obviously we don't claim, na'uzubillah, that we're going to give you a cure, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the curer, but there's always means. So if the medical profession, they ask you to take medicine, then you take the medicine and rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you the cure. So what will be taught there is a way of how to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and relying on Him, inshallah. So this is for brothers and sisters. So if you know anybody closer to there, everybody is welcome to attend. Try to register on the Eventbrite page or the numbers which are on the social media platforms. And if it's too difficult for you to attend Birmingham, it will also be broadcast online, so you can participate online. So on that note, usually we offer this service here as a one-to-one basis. So because we have the event tomorrow, so we're really directing most people to that event, unless it's a very serious emergency case. And then you can give your names to our honourable brother who's hiding behind if you just kindly stand up with Majid, so the brothers can see you. So anybody who wants like an emergency referral, please give your names to Brother Majid. And most importantly, this is a temporal thing. You get ill, physically, spiritual, it comes and goes. But the biggest illness is the illness of sin. So if you want advice on that, inshallah, those who are on the course, those who are not, alhamdulillah, we have qualified Ustadhs here who will give you time for a one-to-one, you could say, consultation. And similarly, do give your name to our Honorable Brother Majid, inshallah. So as there is going to be a spiritual retreat in Denmark on the 17th, we are also going to be benefited by having one in the UK. So in this center, most people will be on a holiday. So it's over the Christmas period from the 24th, Friday the 24th, to Monday the 27th. And you know, many people say, you know, we want spirituality, or we want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to overcome these obstacles. So these are your opportunities. And these are such opportunities that one, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver, He's the one who will bestow. But it takes a bit of sacrifice from ourselves. Sometimes, like, you know, Ustadh Shabaan said, I think only 5 people wanted to be a millionaire, the rest of you don't, mashallah. But if you want to be a millionaire, you have to give some sacrifice. You want to have to give some time. So if you want to be not a millionaire, a multi-billionaire in the spiritual world, then give us 3 days of your time, inshallah. And it's going to, like I said, the brothers can actually attend physically. So register on the Eventbrite, on the social media platforms, and sisters can join online in the comfort of their own home. So it's not restricted to anybody. You don't have to be a scholar, you don't have to have a degree, nothing. Everybody is welcome, inshallah. And you please try to plan your holiday so you can maximize and benefit from this unique opportunity, and invite your families and friends as well, inshallah. And now, inshallah, you can stand up, just stretch your legs, inshallah, because we're going to commence with the majlis of zikr. So there's certain etiquettes so we can benefit more, inshallah. So one most important thing is, again, refresh the thought that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, He is seeing us and He's hearing us. And then, because this is a loud zikr, whenever you find, you can sit back, but try to stay in the semicircle, inshallah, and come closer. So whenever you think you've had enough of a stretch, then you can sit down, inshallah. And because this is a loud zikr, we expect everybody really to participate loud. You know, people are screaming and shouting at football matches, they're not shy there. But when it comes to zikr, you know, they're like squeaking and voice is not coming out. But try to, because it's a loud zikr, inshallah, try to participate loudly. And think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. Internally also communicate with Allah. You know, ask forgiveness for yourself, your family, your relatives, the whole of the ummah really, Muslims and non-Muslims, for Allah to guide them towards the truth. And when durood is recited, use the blessed picture here so you can focus and think about Medina Sharif, think about the Prophet ﷺ, so you can make a spiritual connection with them, inshallah. So if you kindly take your seats, the lights will be turned off, inshallah, to help us to concentrate.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض ما ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم صدق الله العظيم
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم
دائما أبدا
على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق محمد سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من رب ومن عجم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا مولاي صل وسلم دائما
أبدا
على حبيبك خير الخلق
كلهم
هو الحبيب الذي ترجى شفاعته لكل حول من الأهوال مقتحم لكل حول من الأهوال
مقتحمين
فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا 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 الله 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 لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا
الله
لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله
الله
حسبي ربي جل الله ما في قلبي غير الله حسبي ربي جل الله ما في قلبي غير الله نور محمد صلى الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله
إلا الله الله
قد كفاني علم ربي من سؤالي واختياري فدعائي وابتحالي شاهد لي بافتقاري لا إله إلا الله
لا إله
إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله 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 وعسري أنا عبد صار فقري ضمن فقري واضطراري لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله
إلا الله
محمد رسول الله هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة عالم الغيب والشهادة عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا
إلا
هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز المؤمن المهيمن العزيز المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الجبار المتكبر الجبار المتكبر الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما
يشركون
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله
سبحان الله
سبحان سبحان الله 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 عما يشركون حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير سبحان الله عدد ما خلق
سبحان الله عدد ما خلق
سبحان الله ملء ما خلق
سبحان الله ملء ما خلق
سبحان الله عدد ما أحصى كتابه
سبحان الله عدد ما في الصدر
سبحان الله ملء ما أحصى كتابه سبحان الله عدد كل شيء
سبحان الله عدد كل شيء
سبحان الله ملء كل شيء
سبحان الله ملء كل شيء
صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه صلى الله على
محمد
صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله
على محمد
صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله
على محمد
صلى الله عليه وسلم رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين رب اغفر وارحم
خير الراحمين
أنت خير الراحمين أنت خير الراحمين أنت خير الراحمين أنت خير الراحمين اغفر وارحم وأنت خير
الراحمين
رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين أنت خير الرازقين أنت خير الرازقين أنت خير الرازقين أنت خير الرازقين رب اغفر وارحم
وأنت خير الراحمين
رب اغفر وارحم وأنت
خير
خير
الراحمين
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الحي القيوم
الحي القيوم
وأتوب إليه
وأتوب إليه
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الحي القيوم
الحي القيوم
وأتوب إليه
وأتوب إليه
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
أستغفر الله
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الذي لا إله إلا هو
الحي القيوم
الحي القيوم
وأتوب إليه
وأتوب إليه
يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا حبيب سلام
عليه
السلام عليك أشرف الأنبياء السلام عليك يا خاتم النبيين. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه
وسلم.
سبحان ربي العلي الأعلى الوهاب. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم إنا نسألك خير ما سألك عبدك ونبيك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، ونعوذ بك من شر مستعاذ منه عبدك ونبيك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين.
MashaAllah.